Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well out there. And today we're going to head down south once again for another hick flick. Probably the hick flick of all hick flicks. But before we're going to do me a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. Join me here. I greatly would appreciate that. Shameless plug as always for my TeePublic page. I'll leave a link in the description box below. And today we're going to talk about a big one. This was a huge monster hit unexpectedly when it came out in '77. And that film is Smokey and the Bandit. Yes. Smokey and the Bandit debuted May 27th of 1977. It's rated PG. It's an hour and 36 minutes long. Had a budget of $4.3 million. And when it got released that May, it made $126 million in America and $300 worldwide. This is a cultural phenomenon and a huge hit, unexpected hit that year. And Hal Needham wrote and directed this film. He wrote the script on a legal pad, Burt Reynolds says in an interview. And at first, Hal Needham envisioned this as like a small $1 million film, and he was going to have Jerry Reed play the bandit. He showed it to Burt Reynolds. Burt Reynolds thought the script wasn't that great, but he wanted to work with his friend again because Hal Needham's been his stunt double for years, and they were good friends. So he said yes. So Jerry Reed ended up playing Cletus, or aka the Snowman, and Burt Reynolds came in to play the bandit. Also in this film, we got Sally Fields. Her and Burt Reynolds had a relationship at the time, playing Carrie. The bandit meets her along the way in the middle of the road. She had just left the next character's son at the altar. Jackie Gleason came in to play Sheriff Buford T. Justice. And this film has a very simple premise. The bandit is well known in the South. He's a local celebrity for doing incredible feats driving-wise. And this father-son duo walks up, he's at this fair, and offer him $80,000 if he'll drive to Texarkana, Texas, pick up 400 cases of Coors beer, which was illegal to drive across state lines because you weren't allowed to sell it in certain states, which was really a thing back then, to Georgia for his birthday. And if he does that, within 28 hours, they'll get $80,000. So the bandit takes it because he wants a challenge. He goes get his buddy Cletus to drive the big rig, and the bandit gets his hands on the Trans Am to run blocker, and they head off to Texarkana to pick up their load of Coors beer. And on their way back, they cross paths with Buford T. Justice, and he follows them the rest of the way, all the way back to Georgia, going through trials and tribulations, and they deliver the beer on time, get their $80,000, but they take another bet that they can get to Boston and back with some clam chowder in a certain amount of time, and they take that bet as well. And that's the end of Smokey and the Bandit. What to like about this film? Well, the cast. Burt Reynolds is great here. I mean, this was the height of his popularity back then. I mean, this film, he had done hits, but this was his really huge hit at the time. And they would go on to make a sequel, which I don't remember the sequel that much. This is the one I rewatch. I've seen the sequels, 2 and 3, but it's been years since I've seen those films. Jerry Reed's great here as the bandit's best friend, and the Snowman, they're great together. They have great chemistry. You can tell they were friends in real life, and they were. And Sally Fields is great here as well. The studio didn't want Sally Fields. They didn't think she was pretty enough, which is funny. But Burt Reynolds fought for, obviously, their relationship at the time. So she got the role, and she's great here as playing off of Burt in this role. So, you know, their chemistry's there as well. And Jackie Gleason's fantastic. He gets some great lines, which were mostly improvised throughout the film. Matter of fact, Sally Fields is quoted as saying a lot of the dialogue was improvised in this film. The script had the bare bones of a movie, but the dialogue wasn't that great, so the actors just improvised. And there's some really great interactions here between the characters. And it's something I've always appreciated about this film is there's some really witty back and forth between the characters, even though this would be considered at the time and still to this day probably a hick flick or a southern flick. But there is some witty dialogue here and some great back and forth between characters. The stunts are fantastic. There's some great stunt work here, as you would expect from a movie directed by a stuntman. And they really utilize that Trans Am. You know, it's a basic action-packed story. The length is perfect. It's an hour and 36 minutes. There's not a moment wasted. So it doesn't overstay its welcome, which is, you know, that's a key for movies. You know, you don't want to overstay your welcome. Give your audience what they expect, what they want, excite them, and get out before you overstay your welcome. And this movie does that. Any downsides? I don't really have any complaints. It's a movie. This movie I've been watching since I was a kid. I still enjoy watching it. I just rewatched this again on 4K, and it looks really good on this 4K from Universal. And there's some special features on here if you're interested. I've always enjoyed this film. It's not the greatest movie I've ever seen, but it's a movie I've always enjoyed. As a matter of fact, Billy Bob Thornton was quoted as saying to Burt Reynolds, when Burt Reynolds was still alive, where Smokey and Bandit wasn't a movie, it was a documentary. So that was pretty funny. There was 3 Trans Ams used in the making of this film, and according to Hal Needham, by the end of the production, all of them were wrecked beyond usage after they were done filming this movie. Matter of fact, the bridge jump, one car was taken out with just that jump. By the time it landed, it did it successfully on one try, but that car was undrivable after that. So they were down to 2 cars after that. But now, originally this film was supposed to have a $5.3 million budget. That was what was agreed upon. But right before production, Universal, or the studio, slashed $1 million from the budget. So that's why they only had a $4.3 million budget instead of the agreed upon $5.3 originally. Alfred Hitchcock told Burt Reynolds that he loved Smokey and the Bandit. It was one of his favorite films. He'd watch it over and over and over again. And this, obviously, due to this movie, the popularity of the Trans Am went through the roof for several years after the release of this movie. And it looks like it looks like a great badass car in this film. And what Burt Reynolds does driving it, I mean, I can see why this became popular after this movie got released. At the end of the day, this is just a really fun, action-packed, funny movie. Actually, it was the second highest grossing film of 1977. And the only film that grossed more than this one, believe it or not, was the original Star Wars. This was the second highest grossing film. Again, this was a very big surprise hit for the studio and made a hell of a lot of money compared to the budget. At the end of the day, this is a movie that I grew up with. It's a movie I still enjoy. I think it holds up incredibly well. And I would give Smokey and the Bandit, the original, a 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 for Smokey and the Bandit. Have you ever seen this film? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. What would you rank it? What would you give it out of 10? Let that down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, share this video. I greatly would appreciate that. I'll be back soon with some more reviews, but until next time, bye.